I'm offering President Obama a lump of coal for Christmas. Not because he's been bad this year, although I'll get to that. No, I'm offering the president a lump of coal because this product right here holds the potential for a 21st century economic revival.
Welcome back to Midpoint. I'm Rick Blackwell in for Ed Berliner, Representative Mike Kelly with a stocking stuffer for the White House. Welcome back to the Congressman making the point during the Republican weekly radio address just a couple of weeks ago. Coal for Christmas. Pretty funny line, first of all, but talk about the point you're trying to make concerning American energy and also job creation.
Well, I think that it's just pretty obvious. We've watched this, Rick. This is an administration that does not believe in fossil fuels. When I talked about coal, I was talking about a product, and in our state alone, it's 40,000 jobs. But as you look around the country, almost 50% of our electric power is produced by coal-fired power plants. Now, people say, well, what's the relevance of that? Well, if you take coal, if you take natural gas, if you take oil, and you look at, we have an abundance of it. It's affordable and it's accessible. If we use that then to drive our cost per unit of energy down, we put ourselves in a very enviable position when it comes to a global economy. It builds geopolitical relationships that we have to have, and quite frankly, have a much longer lasting effect than just going into a country for a couple of years and then going back out. But the fact that we are we're so blessed with natural resources, I think that people look to the future, say about wind and solar, and all these things are going to be important. Nuclear is another thing that we led the world in and have walked away from. Hydrogen is another opportunity that we have. But right now, when we look at what the United States is blessed with, we have the ability to drive the cost of energy per unit at a lower rate. We can afford then to build things, make things, ship them around the world at a very competitive price and win that battle. It builds us up, and it replaces this idea that somehow even middle-income and lower-income people are going to be facing energy costs that they just can't possibly bear. We know it doesn't figure into when we look at the cost of living. We don't figure in food and fuel, but those are the two main items that people that I represent look at every single day. So let's look at what the Lord has blessed us with. Let's take advantage of the opportunity. Let's make sure we do it in a very responsible way. All of those items produce jobs, and that's what the country needs to do. It needs to get back to work now, and in a way that makes sense. My goodness, we have more people working today. I think 40% of our working class is working below $20,000 a year. Now, they may have a job, but that's not a family-sustaining job.
So important to your district, I know, and your support for the coal industry has been pretty vocal. But can the United States really marry this partnership between fossil fuels and also clean energy?
Yeah, and my question would be, why not? You look at another place on the face of the earth that has done more with technology, that has been able to take situations and break them down and make them into something that makes sense. We lead the world also in the ability to make energy cleaner. We have done things with coal that people couldn't have possibly imagined a couple of decades ago. Now, in spite of that, the administration says, look, we don't care what you do. We'll find a way to regulate you to the point where mining that coal and burning that coal is going to be so heavily influenced by cost that it will no longer be viable on the market. That doesn't make sense. Why would you take an asset and then weigh it down with regulations that make no sense in the long run, but just affect the people saying, well, let's go with something a little bit easier to work with, something that's greener, something that's cleaner. The truth of the matter is, Rick, and we look into this, those are not true statements. We're following a Judas goat in the fact that we think we can do this and still remain competitive in the world. Why would we sacrifice our economic stability because of a policy that just doesn't make sense and has not proved out even scientifically, although people will always turn to that and say, don't you want people to have clean air and clean water? Absolutely. We're doing that right now. Pennsylvania and the coal country has done more to affect clean energy than any other parts of the country right now.
Now, this clean energy debate, huge when it comes to the Keystone Pipeline. But, given the current price of oil and the apparent abundance of natural reserves, do you see any reason other than job creation really to pursue the Keystone Pipeline? Where are you on this right now?
Well, first of all, we have an asset there, and this is one that's going to be paid for by the private sector. The American taxpayer won't have one penny of his or her money into it. It's going to create, I think initially it creates somewhere between 45,000 and 50,000 jobs in those building the pipeline, but it also creates all those ancillary operations along the way. All these towns will swell with people who are in there buying gasoline, buying food, staying in their hotels, buying property. The people who will stay afterwards to maintain the Keystone Pipeline will add to each community's viability, economic viability. Now, we look at this. I had a conversation with T. Boone Pickens one time, and I thought Mr. Pickens was right on. He said, Mike, I know you're concerned about these opportunities. Keep in mind one thing. What we don't take out of the ground today isn't going anywhere. It's going to be there for the future. We do it the right
Congressman,
way. We do it when it makes sense, and it's a win-win for America.
appreciate that. I do want to get one last comment from you. The NPR interview, the president basically saying, you know, the Republicans can't be the party of no. They've got to start making some legislation. What do you have to say about that as far as what he's saying, what your objectives and goals should be for the coming session?
All right, I know the president is noted for humor, but in this case, he's very funny. We have almost 400 pieces of legislation that went through the House of Representatives, that went over to the Senate, that were tabled by Mr. Reid. The president even making that the Republicans are going to somehow have to figure out how to do legislation that is actually passable. You know, Mr. President, really, you have not had to use your veto pen.
Congressman Kelly, got to leave it right there. And we appreciate your comments right here on Midpoint for a Monday afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Rick Blackwell.